Welcome back, everybody, to our second part of pro-choice arguments and pro-life answers. What are the pro-choice arguments? Or should I say, what are the pro-abortion arguments? We're going to be talking about the top 15 pro-abortion arguments and what the pro-life response is, or how should we respond, or how to understand that there really is no good reason to be pro-abortion. There's really no justification for abortion, as we're going to see. And as I said in the first video, this isn't a hate video. It's not us against them. We're right, you're wrong. We're awesome, you're evil. No, this is just to get to the truth of protecting innocent lives, as we said in our first video. But enough with that. Let's get to them. My name is Brian Mercier, and if you haven't been here before, I'm a professional Catholic speaker, retreat leader, and an author. And in this video, we're going to be talking about pro-choice arguments and the pro-life answers. We talk a lot on this channel about God, the Catholic faith, life, and living. So let's get to it. This first objection is actually number 6 that we're talking about. And the 6th objection is that a fetus cannot feel any pain when it's aborted. And so therefore, it's okay to kill it. A fetus is actually scientifically from 8 weeks all the way up until birth. So for most of that time, it can feel pain. If you're talking about before that time, it's not called a fetus. It's called an embryo. And if we just want to look at a quick example of this, imagine if somebody walks up to someone, punches them once and knocks them out, and then decides to kill them while they're unconscious. Is it okay just because they can't feel pain? I mean, this argument is really not well thought out, because based on that same logic, it would be okay to kill somebody as long as they couldn't feel it. Feeling is not the gauge we use of whether it's right or wrong to kill somebody. It's wrong because it's wrong to kill an innocent human being. Whether they're born or unborn, it's always wrong. The 7th argument that you're going to hear from pro-abortion people is this, that we need to make an exception for rape and incest. And this is one of the most common objections. Some people actually care for the rape victims, but the majority of them just want to use this to stick it in pro-life people's face and to say, look, you have to make exceptions. But in reality, we can't make exceptions in any case, and here's why. First, right off the bat, this is what I want to say, is that what happened to that woman was not only barbaric, horrific, and evil, but that poor woman who got raped, just for example, she was innocent. She didn't do anything wrong, and she had this evil forced upon her, and she didn't choose it. And we're saying that the best solution for this is to force that evil in turn upon another human being, upon a baby who's innocent. And we're going to go do something barbaric, horrific, and evil to that baby, even though the baby itself is innocent. The baby didn't choose to be born. It didn't do anything wrong. It doesn't do anything to harm anyone. So why would we take something that's evil and then go do evil to someone else? And in fact, if we look at it realistically, the only person who doesn't get harmed, the woman got harmed against her will. The baby is being harmed against its will. The only person who isn't being harmed is the person who should be harmed, and that's the rapist. We all know that the laws are not hard enough against rapists, and they get a little slap on the wrist and they get to walk away. The only ones who should be prosecuted and should be persecuted and should have their crimes held against them is the rapist. But they're not. We're hurting the two innocent people who never chose this, and they're the ones who shouldn't be injured at all. So what we're saying is we should help the women. That's what we're saying, is we should help the women who have been raped. Give them the help they need, the care they need, counseling, support, anything and everything they need. But we should also, in the same way, protect the child, protect the baby, because that baby didn't do anything wrong either. And we should all together work to get rapists convicted and have harder laws against them and their crimes. I've heard a couple of rape victim counselors who have counseled rape victims their whole lives. And they say that in almost every single case, 100% of the time, people who were raped and went on to have their baby were exceedingly happy, because from something horrific that happened to them, they said something beautiful, a new life came out of it. And while some of them chose to give it up for adoption, it said that changed their life because they saw something so beautiful come out of something so horrific, and it was really helpful and healing to them. Conversely, they said that all the people who went on to have an abortion after being raped actually said it killed them in a sense. They had decades of hurt and depression because while they couldn't help what was done to them, they could help what was done to their child, and they felt like they make the wrong choice. And that went on to give them such guilt for years and years and years. And they needed healing, they needed to find counseling. And these rape counselors actually said that giving life was the best thing. So that for the people who said it's going to be awful, how would you make a rape victim actually have to give birth? You're so mean. It actually helps them and heals them in most cases, whereas the converse is actually hurting the woman more. Pam Stenzel is a national speaker, and I listened to her talk once, and one thing in her talk blew me away. She said that people in this country say that if a woman was raped, she should get an abortion, as if the woman's child has no dignity, has no life, has no meaning, that it's worth nothing. And then she went on to tell the audience that she was speaking to, she said, I am a rape victim. I'm the product of rape, and I help and counsel people all around this country, and I'm a product of rape. She's saying, are you telling me that my life is not worth anything? Are you telling me that I don't have a right to live? How are you going to force yourself and your views upon me and not give me a choice? And when I thought about that, I was like, wow, that's really deep and that's really powerful to hear it from a first-person account. The last thing I'll say on this point before I move on to the next one is that people who are pro-abortion really try to use this argument. I mean, all the time. You have to make exceptions. You have to make exceptions. But let's say that we're willing to make an exception. Let's just say, for the sake of the argument, that we're willing to make an exception for rape and incest. All abortions from rape and incest make up less than 1% of all abortions. Less than 1%. So I always ask pro-choicers, I said, are you willing to outlaw abortion in every other case if we make an exception for rape and incest? And of course, 100% of the time, they say, no, we are not, because that's not the issue. We have to give a woman a choice and blah, blah, blah. Then why are you bringing it up? Don't bring it up, because it's just a straw man argument. It's just smokes and screens and mirrors, and you don't really mean it, and it's not a good argument because it's less than 1%. And if you're not willing to get rid of abortion in all the other cases as well, then this is not a good argument. Again, just to reiterate that the pro-life stance is that we want to help the women who are raped or who had bad things happen to them, but we also don't want to go on and do bad things to their child, and we want to help them as well. We want to help both the mother and the child. That is the best bet in convicting rape victims and people who commit crimes. Pro-abortion argument number 8 is that we have to make exceptions in abortion for women who have health complications, or it's going to take the life of a mother. I would say the same thing I said in the last one. If we compromise and we make exceptions for this, which is almost 0% of all abortions, then are you willing to outlaw all the other abortions if we make exceptions in this case? And of course the answer is no, so that makes this argument null and void. It doesn't work because you don't really mean it, and it's not just the exception that you want to make. You want abortion generally. Pro-abortion people want abortion on demand for anyone. I mean, there's different levels of people, and what they want, but the really hardcore people, this isn't an argument for them. They want abortions on demand. Now, here's the problem with this argument. This is so rare, which is why people won't just make an exception for this, because it will be almost 0 abortions every year. In fact, one doctor says he only knows of maybe 1 case or so each year out of 15 or 16,000 women that he sees that have these type of complications that might affect their life. But most doctors that I've heard of say this isn't even an issue anymore because of the technology we have. And some doctors say they've never seen or heard of it in their entire career because it really doesn't happen anymore because of our technology. Maybe once in a great while here or there something might happen that's a freak coincidence, but it generally doesn't happen. And most of the women that have complications later in their late-term pregnancies just have C-sections. And I know several women who have had C-sections to deal with those complications. It's not wrong to try to fix the problem within the woman because doctors should do that. But the baby is not a problem. The baby's a blessing, and that should be protected at all costs. A baby should be protected as much as possible, and we shouldn't just use this to try to prove that abortion should be legal in this country. My beautiful wife was actually born a couple months early. She was a preemie. Her mother had complications and had to have a C-section. And do you know what? My wife was a beautiful, unique individual human life, a little baby in the womb. And 3 seconds later, when the C-section happened and the doctor took her out and held her in his hands, it was still the same unique, beautiful, wonderful new life that is my wife. She was still the same baby in and out of the womb. It's not just tissue in the womb. It's not just a non-person in the womb. She was a person in the womb, and she came out a person. And that's the type of person that we want to protect at all costs. The person who doesn't have a voice to speak for themselves and can't speak on their own behalf. The number 9 pro-choice argument is that I have the right to refuse a life in my womb. For example, the baby is dependent on me, just as someone who might need an organ transplant, like a kidney. I don't have to give them a kidney. I can refuse my kidney to them and not save their life. So this is just a refusal of saving the baby's life. And really, this is a terrible, selfish, probably the most selfish argument of all of them. I don't really understand it. I mean, women are so beautiful, so life-giving, so selfless, so loving, and so sacrificial. And yet so many women today have just been so hurt, so abused. And now they're just so mean and heartless and selfless and cold that they'd actually make arguments like this. That you have a right to refuse it. This is not a right to refuse argument. This is actually the killing of an innocent human life that's in your womb, your child. The difference is that kidneys are made to filter your own blood. That's their function and that's their purpose. On the other hand, a uterus is actually, the function and purpose of a uterus is to support the life of a child and to give it the support and the help it needs. That's the purpose of a uterus. So there's clearly a difference. One is meant to do one thing and one is meant to do another. One is meant to bring about a baby. That's the purpose of a uterus, and that's why you have it. And it's the same thing with abortion. Abortion is a direct murder or killing or the taking of an innocent human life, a new human unique life. It's taking that life. It's not refusing to save it. There's a difference. Some people use the argument that it's like coming onto my property. If a person comes onto my property, I can shoot them and kill them. And I'm just doing that to the baby. I'm refusing their right to come onto my property. But again, this is ridiculous. You don't just shoot people who come onto your property. In fact, you'll probably be convicted and put in jail for doing so, unless in very rare cases, they're holding you at gunpoint and trying to kill you, and you kill them in self-defense. But there's a very big difference between the two. The baby is not attacking you. The baby's not a killer. The baby's not a criminal, and the baby's not trying to do anything to you. It's a little helpless, innocent human being that's actually just trying to survive, and you killing it is much different than killing a convicted killer who's trying to kill you. And the number 10 argument is this, that I'm personally opposed to abortion, but I don't want to tell a woman what to do with her own body. I don't like abortion, but I don't think we should have the right to tell women what to do. Let me put it to you this way. This is an example or two that I like to give. If you saw a woman being sexually assaulted in a dark alley by a bigger man, what would you do? Would you sit around and just watch it? Or worse, walk away? Or would you try to stop him? Or if you can't stop him and overpower him, would you yell and scream and make noise and try to get other people to come and help him and really just try to freak that guy out so he stops abusing that woman? In other words, would you do something about it? Or would you sit back and say, hey, it's not my choice. That man is a free man. He has his own free will. He can do whatever he wants. I mean, I'm personally opposed to rape. I'm personally opposed to sexually abusing women, but I don't want to force my morality on him. I don't want to force my opinions on him. He can do whatever he wants. Likewise, this is actually a true story about a boyfriend who got so mad at his girlfriend that he started punching her in the face in public, in a public market square. And he punched her and beat her so badly that she ended up dying right there in the street. Of course, the police came and arrested him, and the news people all came, and it was just chaos. And when they interviewed the people on the street, they said, why? There are so many people around. Why didn't anybody do anything to help this poor innocent girl? And they said, well, we personally thought what he did was wrong and bad, but we didn't want to interfere. I mean, it's his life. We didn't want to tell him what to do. We didn't think we had the right to intrude on his life. I mean, this is what happened. An innocent woman died because we refused to speak up, because we refused to say something and do what's right. And that's what pro-life people are doing in abortion. We're not trying to call out women or demean them or make fun of them or anything else. We're trying to say that killing a human life is wrong, and we're not going to sit back silently and just watch it happen. We say, oh, well, it's a woman's choice. But if a woman chooses to go murder someone else, if a woman chooses to kill herself, and she has a death wish and she wants to kill herself, would you not say anything? Or would you say, oh, well, she has her choice, she can do whatever she wants? No, we need to speak up for what's true and for what's right. And this is why it's not just a woman's issue. It's a man and woman's issue. It's an everybody issue. Because whether you're a man or a woman, if you see someone in a dark alley being beaten, you should do whatever you can, as much as possible. For abortion, if we see that something atrocious is happening and an innocent person is dying, whether you're a man, woman, boy, or girl, you should speak up. You should say something. You should do something. If certain people aren't moral enough to know that killing an innocent child is wrong inside the womb, then other people, no matter what gender, it doesn't matter what gender, what race. I mean, so many people are becoming racist and sexist today, saying, oh, you don't get a choice, you don't get a say. Everyone has a say today when something wrong is being done. In abortion, it's wrong. And we're going to speak up and we're going to say something because we want to help the little child in the womb and we want to help the mother and not give her years and years more of regret and guilt and things that she's going to regret for the rest of her life, perhaps.